Good evening, everyone. I'm Neena Bhattacharjee, and I'm the host for the second day of ODC, the first ever ODC, Odisha Design Council, that was initiated by Professor Chaudhary and his team. Now we are at this last session, which is a panel discussion on heritage and smart cities. I'll give a quick introduction to the panelist, and after that, we will see a recorded presentation. So the first participant is Mark Watson, and currently Mark is a member of the board of advisors of Odisha Design Council. He formed DesignThinkers Group Australia, Melbourne, based at Melbourne, and is a partner to the DesignThinkers Group Amsterdam. His specialities range from interior architecture, product design, furniture design, service design, design thinking, design pedagogy, and design management. The second member of the panel is Ms. Sanmitra Chitte. She is the Dean of School of Management at the World University of Design. She has an experience of 14 plus years in various sectors. Ms. Chitte demonstrates great skills in integrating design and innovation within the corporate business. She has an in-depth knowledge of branding, print design, photography, web design, etc., and has her research papers in conferences and published in reputed journals. The third panelist is Dr. Anubha Kakroo. Dr. Anubha is the professor and director, School of Designat, Anant National University. Designat. Before joining Anant University, she was the Dean Faculty of Architecture at DIT University. She has remained on several boards of studies, research, and management for institutes such as School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, and Center of Innovation, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and been an advisory on the advisory board of institutes such as National Institute of Design and National Institute of Fashion Technology. The fourth panelist in the discussion is Professor Shaleen Sharma. She is Dean of Architecture at the World University of Design. Oh, I'm sorry, he has been practicing architect for over 22 years and has been actively involved in academics on visiting basis with reputed institutions like University of School of Architecture and Planning, USAP Delhi, and Kamla Raheja with Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture and Environmental Studies, Juhu, Mumbai. Shaleen is also known for exploring the medium of film in the context of architecture. He has made several documentaries for UGC on the subject of architecture, A Garden of the Heart, a film on architect Joseph Alan Stein, and is one of his well-acclaimed documentaries. Now we can start with the panel discussion.
Your recording has stopped.
अरे नहीं चल रहा है भाई.
नहीं, it gives us a message that it has stopped.
Anubha, we just heard it little later than it started, I think. That's the problem.
Oh, it's a lag?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Sanmitra. I will shut up.
Sorry, but has the discussion started? Looks like it's a lag. Okay. Yes, it is going to start in a moment again. I'll hit the record button again. Anshu. Please record on the computer because on cloud you will only get. Yes, Anshu. Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Sanmitra Chitte. I'm the president of ADI Delhi NCR, and I'm the Dean of School of Management, World University of Design. Today, we have gathered together for a panel discussion, which is curated by Mark Watson, and we will be talking on heritage and smart cities. A very warm welcome to all the panel members here. Before I introduce the panel members, let me introduce a little about this panel discussion. This panel discussion is being done for Odisha Design Week, which will be playing in December. So we will be discussing about smart cities. We will be discussing about AI and data collection. We will be discussing about STEM and STEAM education as the next possible education system. We will be discussing about design thinking and social science. And all this discussion will be leading to heritage and culture in architecture. So let me please introduce the esteemed panelists. We have Dr. Anubha Kakroo. She's an architect from School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. She also holds a postgraduate degree in industrial design from the same institute. She's done her second post-graduation in design management, specializing in strategy, innovation, and branding at Brunel University in London. And her thesis on design thinking in business was way ahead of the curve when she was awarded a master's degree with a distinction for the same. She has worked as a director, design and cultural insight at the Futures Brand India Limited, where her work involved design, thinking and process, and research as a proto resource for cultural studies and insights to make sense of the Indian people and context. Prior to Future Brand, she's worked with British Council as the head of programs for India and Sri Lanka and worked closely in UK offices and other international organizations. Anubha stepped in and took over as the Dean at Faculty of Architecture and Design at DIT University, Dehradun in 2017, spearheading the development of faculty into one of the national standing. Her foray in academic terrain continued with her stint as the Dean of Outreach, Industry Interface and Corporate Relations at IIAD, which is affiliated to Kingston University, UK, at New Delhi. Currently, Anubha is the professor at Anant National University, Ahmedabad, where part of her mandate is to guide and establish the fledgling departments by strengthening pedagogy, processes, and people, and to establish new areas of the university to move into. She has been a mentor for Center of Innovation, Incubation, and Entrepreneurship at IIM Ahmedabad. She has also been on the board of studies for various departments of design and architecture. She has served on the National Committee on Design of Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, 2018 to 2019. She also serves as a design thinking coach for Q Glue India Limited, having conducted workshops and sessions pan-India. She is also a member of CMC Group for ADI Delhi NCR. This with regards to Dr. Anubha. Let me introduce our next panelist, architect Shaleen Sharma. Architect Shaleen Sharma has started with his journey in field of architecture, uh, having studied at TVB School of Habitat Studies, Vasant Kunj, New Delhi, as a BR student. Post graduating, he decided to reinforce and strengthen his understanding of traditional architecture by pursuing masters in Prasada, practice, research, and advancement in South Asian design and architecture from the Montfort University of Leicester, UK. Please excuse me for my pronunciation in case. He secured Charles Wallace Trust and University Scholarship for his further education. His research involved exploration of medium of film in addressing complex issues of architecture. Since his return in India in 2000, he has worked on several film projects. Some significant ones were with the AVRC Mysore, AVRC Patiala, COA, INTAC, CFSI, IISC, and DSIDC. Shaleen continues to work on his documentaries and since 2015 has been leading the School of Architecture at World University of Design, Sonipat, Haryana. Let me introduce the main panelist, Mark Watson. He's been curating this talk and the panel together along with Odisha Design Week. He has been the managing partner Australia for the DesignThinkers Group Australia. He has been working with the Odisha Design Council as a member of Board of Advisors. He has been the co-convener for the designers in Australia and India by collaborating and co-designing solutions in both countries and linking the best academic research. He's a director of Design Providence, which is again situated in Australia. He has been working for more than 37 years, and he has been working for the betterment of architecture, product design, NPD, design pedagogy, design management together with India and Australia at the same time. He has been there with various universities in India in his duration of work. So over to you, Mark, and Mark will continue the panel ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanmitra.
Thank you, Sanmitra. might want to check with Team ADI as to whether they've got some mic issues in the background there, but let's push ahead. Welcome, everyone. We're all gathered together for the benefit of the good people of Odisha, who look as though they're looking to launch into the international space through the Design Week, which was put together by Paresh Chowdhury for as a startup, and we're all trying to help in as best we can, and are excited about opportunities for engagement with design development within Odisha. So actually, I introduced Paresh to the Australian Government Consul General in Kolkata, and she's appearing as a keynote speaker in one of the other panel sessions. So it's raised a lot of interest. So I personally would like to speak more about heritage, but everyone seems to get excited about smart cities. So we have to use the carrot of smart cities, and hopefully this panel discussion this afternoon for me will delve deeper and see the opportunities. Actually, I was looking at the Indian government website for smart cities from the national government, and the Bhubaneswar Odisha page had a big picture of a children's playground, which was fabulous because on an international basis, that's not seen as smart cities. Smart cities is Internet of Things, and how we're all being tracked and monitored. But it's good to see that there's a liberal interpretation of what is smart within cities. But heritage is something that's always been of interest to me. I've ran a workshop in Ahmedabad in about 2017 at Gujarat Technological University in collaboration with the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation on exactly this, heritage and smart cities, and was working with a lady that runs the Museums Association of Ahmedabad, and we had a great workshop using design thinking over a 2-3 day period, come up with some great ideas of how people could be very clever about improving people's access to heritage. So it's a very topical subject that we're looking to cover today. So we're just going to have a general conversation. I suppose we can go around in circles between the two speakers that we have joined with us here today, and probably want to do ladies first and ask Anubha on her interpretation of smart cities, just smart cities, and we'll lead on over the course of the discussion to bring it back to heritage.
Thank you, Mark. Launching straight on to the question that you posed to me, my views on smart cities. So, I mean, as is conventionally understood, smart cities is something that we think is linked to, and you yourself said, IoT and data and technology and all of that. But somewhere, because I also come from a background of human-centered design, I think a city is smart when it's livable. I mean, it is smart for the people as well, and not just technology. So that would be my interpretation of smart city. However, that said, that is an ideal situation. That said, when I look at the Smart Cities Mission India, it is, of course, linked to technology and ease of use and services that get in through data and all of other AI and other such technological innovations. That is the mandate that the government of India has given it. I do know that a lot of cities, 100 cities to be precise, are undergoing this currently. Many of them have had to make proposals and get them passed through various committees. And knowing one city where the process I observed, well, not firsthand, but secondhand, that is Dehradun, I can say the process was a bit rigorous, and people did have to make, Dehradun, for example, had to make the proposal at least 3 times before it got accepted. And the reasons were fairly valid. And I'll take the liberty of sharing them here. Like the first proposal that Dehradun made for the smart city mission was, it used greenfield area. and that was rejected, saying that you don't need to venture into areas which are not yet built and build more. So the second proposal that Dehradun sent was for a brownfield development. And that was also rejected because the citizen inputs were not very apparent. And so the proposal was sent back again to the Dehradun Smart City Mission to say, no, you need to get in the co-op, you need to get in the citizens and other stakeholders involved. So the third proposal that finally the Dehradun Smart City Mission made did take care of, to some extent at least, citizens and other stakeholders, citizen bodies, NGOs, and other people. And it is a brownfield development now, which actually takes some of the most congested and older parts of Dehradun and looks at how to get them into better service mode, which is what, fortunately or unfortunately, the technology-driven Smart City Mission is doing that. And I know we'll come to it later, but since this is the oldest part of Dehradun, in some ways, it is also the heritage part. So that's an interesting spanner that I will throw into the wheel for now. But let's leave it at that thought, and over to you, Mark and Shaleen.
Thanks, Anubha. So, Shaleen, do you want to add your views on smart cities as a definition? And you got your mic.
You're on mute.
You're on mute. Is the catch cry?
Yes. And that was not a very smart move to have it on mute and start talking. So anyways, you see, my take on smart cities is quite different. So I would really pose all these things as questions probably for you and Anubha to answer. So I'm just a conscious architect, and I keep thinking about and reading about these things, which which raise more of questions in my mind rather than providing me with a lot of answers. We still do not have an example of a smart city existing so that we can, but what we have existing at the moment are all these heritage towns and cities which are still functioning. And I call them smart because they're still functioning for the past, 600 to 1000 years. So there must be something right in them, that they're still functioning. No matter what you say about them, they were still functioning, quite functional during the COVID time. Now, as a student of architecture, I'll say, the efficient cities are the cities which allow a free or an efficient flow of goods and people through it. That is quite a accepted definition. Now, are we collecting this data, or whatever we are doing, are we doing it for the purpose to enable this entire inflow and outflow of goods and people to happen more efficiently? Or we are looking at other things like, how to take care of the pandemics and the epidemics and things like that. Now, what is the goal of having smart cities when you already have paradigms of heritage cities which are existing at the moment and there is nothing wrong in them? So does it require for us to get a blueprint from somewhere else and sort of put it on our landscape, or and say that this is a smart city and this is how we should start living now? I don't think the solution lies there. So probably I'll be building on the questions more to say, and will expect answers from Anubha and Mark yourself.
Well, that's pretty much the general view that is being developed at the moment. I've got down here the artificial intelligence. I think general intelligence is this battle between the architecture of old and technology, but architecture and design, for me, it's a mixing pot of new ideas, new technologies, and new materials, and designers just love to play in that space and develop new solutions to problems by mixing that up. So the Internet of Things is something that we always would have done as designers, bring in an engineer because there's this need, and then they produce it. It's the hype that's being driven that everyone gets excited by. I was looking for a film clip for a presentation that I was looking to do with Wind in the Willows, if you're familiar with that story. and Toad gets overwhelmed by the motor car, and then he falls out of love with the motor car and gets overwhelmed with a love for the airplane. So it's this new thing, and it's all good and exciting, and it's great for the internet and the technology industries. But you know, designers are usually the people at the start that have to pull all this together and make sense of it. So in Melbourne, where I reside, our Melbourne City Council was playing in that space. They don't want to own AI or the Internet of Things. They just want to see what's involved and allow private industry to come in to offer their services. But they were looking at things like basketball hoops and putting a sensor on the back of the basketball hoop so that every time the basketball hit, they realized that there was someone there and someone was using that facility. Therefore, they can work out from that information whether there's a need, whether it's well serviced or well populated. So that meterized reading is beneficial. Also, they're talking about rubbish bins that can read as to whether they're going to be full. So instead of sending someone along on a weekly basis to empty out all the rubbish bins, and some of them don't need to be emptied. So that was another big selling point for the city of Melbourne. So we're fully aware of some of the potential of Internet of Things technology and how it can improve our lives within cities. So one of the key things is obviously with traffic and the coordination of traffic lights and sequencing it with the speed of a vehicle as it moves through an entire city on a major thoroughfare. If they allow that transition to happen in an unimpeded way, it just improves services throughout. So maybe if you can share, maybe again, Anubha, any experiences that you have anecdotally of the benefits of the Internet of
what I would like to add here, and I mean, again, this might go off a little bit on a tangent, but what I would like to add here is that technology has always kind of intervened in human settlements. If I look at modern urban planning, that's also post-industrial revolution. That is something that came about in continental Europe and in England primarily because of the sewage and all the transportation of the sewage that they had to do. So as a result, the nature of the cities or the face of the cities changed forever, not always for the better. So I think with the smart cities, what I would like us to do ideally is to also look at the human face of cities or the living face of cities and see how that intervenes with technology. We did rationalize our sewage movement and our mobility with the automobile, the American city. But in the process, we lost a lot of things that medieval cities had, whether in Europe or in Asia or wherever. And that is something that we probably could be a little wary of now that we get these other database tech systems and look at smart cities. That said, yes, there are some advantages to be had for smart cities, though I'm not too sure. And probably, Shaleen, that is what you hinted at when you said that it has to be looked at in context. In the context of India, perhaps, we are not so hard-pressed for human resource that we need everything to be mechanized. Yeah. However, that, so it's a very, for me, it's a very tricky chicken and egg situation. I do, if I put on my kind of a technocrat kind of a hat, I can see where the smart cities vision comes from. But when I look at it as a citizen or an architect and a city dweller, I kind of find it a little bit irritating. I just want to end with the fact that one thing that the human beings always succumb to, and that is the danger, is convenience. So convenience is something that we always succumb to. So those straight highways where we can zoom by at 80 or 100 miles an hour or whatever it is, and therefore reach the next town instead of in 4.5 hours, in maybe 3.75 hours. And that 45 minutes that we've gained becomes this critically important thing for us. So that convenience, I think human beings are therefore very, very complicit. In fact, we are the reason for smart cities also in this whole business of convenience. And if the smart city is already only being made for conveniencing the human being or, the human machinery, then I have a lot of problem with it. But if we could look beyond mere convenience to actual quality of life, then, well, it could dovetail into our existing systems or traditional systems or whatever it is. So just that. But that's a very big, that's a tall order, I know, because as I said, that we succumb to convenience at the drop of a hat. Mark, you're on mute.
Let's go. I'm trying to make sure that no background noise creeps in. Anyway, so Shaleen, what's your take on it?
Yeah, again, I will reinstate my point by saying that at the end of the day, artificial intelligence still has that word artificial prefix to it. So, and when we talk about technology, it's not that heritage was devoid of complete technology. We had indigenous technology. Now look at towns like Dholavira, survived for 3,000 years and maybe 5,000 years back with practically no rainfall happening there, but they stored every bit of water. Now, isn't that indigenous technology? And when it comes to the urban scenario these days, Anubha touched upon that word convenience. Now, as generally speaking, as Indians, we cannot leave that bit of convenience, Now, let me talk about the layers of urban fabric that we live in. Now, just imagine a kind of a habitat where the father is running a shop across the street, the children are playing in the park, the mother is cooking, and the mother has an eye on the father as well as the children, and the old folks of the house are sitting and enjoying the shade or the sun of the street. Now, this is the scenario where everything is happening in the same given space, which are overlapped. Now, we can call this convenience because that is very much part of the Indian society, whether you go to the north or whether you go to the south or east or west. The kind of convenience that is required for all urban scenarios stays the same for us. So the moment artificial intelligence or something like that creeps into an urban fabric, it will be very interesting to see how it invades it or it helps us, is something which is still a mystery. And I would go for the fact that it would definitely invade it. We have to rather actually explore and grow upon our indigenous technology rather than making it more mechanized in that sense, and train people in order to do it. And train the residents also to follow that. That will be a complete paradigm shift to the way we've been living and the way we're gonna live in the future. So we'll have to find some alternate means for it. That's my point.
May I interject here, Mark, with your position? I also wanted to add to that. Shaleen, I agree what you said, but sometimes, and I will offer a contrarian view here, we do tend to look at heritage with a lens of nostalgia. And that is something that we probably should be a little wary of. I know Dholavira, and then we can go to Harappa, or we can go to any of these examples. And yes, I'm the firmest believer in traditional knowledge systems, as you said. However, if we can take a completely rational look on what it is, and also again, I get it back to the fact of the people living in the cities, because it's nostalgia. The scenario that you painted about the father having a shop and the kids playing in the street and the old one sitting, that's fine, but ask some of the younger people of that family whether they want to be there. So there is also aspiration and there is also context, and this all plays out in this urban environment or any settled human settlement side by side. So while as trained architects, most likely, and as designers or what have we, some of our intelligentsia and all of us part of that will go on about heritage to a large extent. But honestly, and I'm not saying this is right or that is wrong, but if I go speak to any family living in, let's say, any of the older cities in India, including Ahmedabad, Mark, where you work, they want to move out. Now, what their reasons being, they are valid, invalid. I mean, I look at some of the beautiful houses in Calcutta, they're absolutely stunning, but they do not have a certain convenience of running water. And then the people living in them do not want to live that life anymore. We can go there and admire it and feel, oh, what a beautiful building it is. And, and it is indeed a very beautiful building. And I would love to be hosted there for some time. Could I live my life there? I'm not sure. I'll be very brutally honest, right? So that veneer of nostalgia and that veneer of romance that we get over heritage is something that we need to look at critically, and not abandon the good that we have, but also not ignore the choices that people there who are part of those systems want to make now going forward.
Yeah, I was part of the Victorian government trade mission to India. We went to Bangalore, Delhi, and Mumbai, and I was talking about old and new living together, and architects and designers able to put a new contemporary building alongside a monument, but blended in such a way that it's not an eyesore. So heritage is, there's two schools of heritage that don't touch it and leave a lot of space around it, or make it usable for the convenience of modern people. I find it interesting with this technological push. If I can go back into that stream, and we'll come back to heritage very much soon. On the back of that, I've got down here STEM versus STEAM. So STEM is a big push in Australia. There's a huge push for STEM education, and it is vitally important for engineers and all kinds of people to do that math science approach to things. But putting the A into STEM, the arts, design, culture, is an integral part. For mine, it gives a balanced view to the students that are studying and engaging in it, and that then makes them a better practitioner. When you look at design thinking, we work with disparate groups of multidisciplinary people, and we try and help them to be as creative and innovative as they possibly can, so they can take that into their organizations and use those tools. So just some idea about the ability of arts and the creative industries to have more input into this. I remember I was trying to get research funding with the Australia-India Strategic Research Fund, but it was only science, and there was no room there for a designer. So you had scientists coming up with these new machines that they were working on, but they weren't able to bring designers in, or they wanted all the money for themselves rather than spread it out properly and get a decent outcome from the activity, whereas designers probably would have made it far more practical and possibly would have made it far more commercially viable, and therefore the product, we would assume, would have been more successful than just an experiment that led to a couple of papers and the soaking up of all that funds. So yeah, we like to think of impact. So I suppose in that terms, your thoughts on arts as a multidisciplinary partner to science and tech.
Shaleen, you want to take that, or?
Yeah. Now, again, I will pose the same question, whether you're looking at art from the nostalgic point of view, or you're taking art as a progressive, completely new thing, which will sort of suit the concept of the smart cities. And so there will be smart art and not the old styled. Now, are we talking about building a new context, which could be utopian in nature? Or if we build from the past, then it will become nostalgic. So I think, wow, so these are the two ends of the poles that we are talking about. Maybe the solution lies right in the center, where we are sitting and talking at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's what I was alluding. So, and that's what I was alluding to. it's a balance. It's a multidisciplinary team. We work in architecture and design. We bring in multidisciplinary teams. We have engineers on the project to give their expertise and input. And at the end, it's a homogeneous product that is produced at the end. But your thoughts, Anu?
Yeah, so again, I think the problem is not with STEM or STEAM. The problem is the way we've looked at the subject matter. I mean, to say that there's no art, culture, or philosophy in math would be highly inappropriate. And some of the scientists are the best known performers of certain or practitioners of creative fields. So I think the problem lies in the way in which we have broken down these subject matters and kind of made them into these kind of standalone boxes or silos, as the word is. Also because I think we're looking at them as vocations rather than as education or knowledge. The moment you start looking at math or science as knowledge, I doubt very much that you can keep art out of it or anything creative out of it. Science in itself is a highly creative field. If you read, in fact, I was just reading this book by this young Chilean author, Lebatut, called The Way We Understand the World. And he's just described the lives of some of the famous scientists, ending with the two most famous of the current generation, two of the most famous, Schrödinger and Heisenberg. And, you know, the way the portrayal of these scientists has been, I mean, they're extremely creative people. And I would love to have them in my studio. So to say that there is no creativity in science or tech or engineering and math, I think it's a problem of the system and not of the subject itself. So the moment we stop looking at them as vocations or only as career options and probably look at them holistically as subjects that they are, they, by the very nature of any subject which human civilization or mind has developed, it is not devoid of art and culture. There is a culture of science. One of my most memorable lectures as a student has been by a professor here in Delhi, where he was talking about the art of science, so to say. But that's it. So I'm saying that these are man-made, or not even man-made. I would say these are education system-made distinctions. And perhaps the system needs to change. And, you know, then there is no STEM or STEAM, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, well, it looks at it's a polarization in this world. It's the black and the white. Even the yin and the yang had a mixture and crossover. There's a little bit of it in.
Absolutely.
So I suppose I'm leading into design thinking as a tool. I've taught in design into the Master of Business Administration here in Melbourne, and they're really great students. They're sponges. They just love to take it all in. But as soon as they pick it up as a process, a stage step-by-step process, which they've learnt in 5 weeks, and then they apply it, it's problematic, and it's a bit of an insult and a slap in the face to a designer that spent a lifetime building the skills to be able to utilize that to improve the life of humankind out there. But so we're talking about black and white before. Between inductive and deductive thinking, there's been some writing about abductive thinking, which is a hybridization of different research methods and tools that you are able to use to interrogate a subject. So I'd be interested to see your feedback on design and that abduction process of hybridization of different research methods to explore a problem. So we'll start again. Anubha.
Okay, right. So yes, I completely agree with you, Mark. This abduction of design thinking per se by various disciplines, while I quite enjoy the fact that design comes to center stage, but I do also do the fact that, as you rightly said, that this is something that designers and architects spend almost a lifetime kind of learning. And then we kind of turn it out in 3-day or 3-week modules. So I often wonder how that does that pan out. what my thoughts on, so I kind of, moved away from design thinking in 2015, having totally given up on the bastardization, if I may call it that, of design thinking that I saw happening around me. It's only very lately, in fact, I suppose you could call it, as all of us have been going through this, the pandemic reflection, that I do feel that there is merit in design thinking. Of course, there is. However, the way it has been used and misused and abused and abducted, perhaps, is something that I worry about. One of the things that I think is missing in the way it's being bandied about currently is the process of making. Because I think the whole design thinking is very intrinsically linked to design making. And that is something that's been taken out of the design process. I mean, double diamond or idea or whatever, whichever process you're following. A post-it does not make it a making, right? So my humble submission, if I may, to this panel and to you, Mark, because you do these things, is that it should have a very, very strong component of making and prototyping, and actually making with your whole hands. Not because I'm trying to be old school or whatever, but because I strongly believe, and I think there is evidence in neurosciences that there is a cognitive connection between your hand and your brain, and you're thinking while you're making. So designers don't think sitting on a table and gazing out into outer space and then put a post-it. Most of us are either drawing or in the workshop, in the model room, wherever. And I think that aids the process of thinking, and it aids the process of getting out of all the virtues that design thinking apparently brings to the table. I think are intrinsically linked to making. And I think the next stage of design thinking should be design making. Before you get into anything.
Design by doing. So
design by doing, yeah.
Yeah, it's very much
thinking by doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Shaleen, the role of social science architects these days are, well, I'll speak from my experience here. I was teaching at University of Melbourne in the architecture school there, a subject called developing the brief, and a lot of people just follow the edict of the lone genius school of architecture, where they're the only people that ever had a good idea. They don't quite realize where the ideas actually come from. So my push was to explore through different research methods, interviewing clients, observing use of space, sending out cultural probe tools with people to record in diaries their experiences and their thoughts, and collecting that. That's not usually the practice within design schools and architecture schools, but it is emerging. And so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on social science design thinking in that context.
The way we follow it here is quite an old pattern, which I studied at my College of Architecture, and I feel it's still very, very relevant. And perhaps it's not been pushed that hard. So what we do, we start basically with the process of documentation. So any design problem has to be based in a context. So we generally do a reverse exercise in which we first decide in which context are we building this in. Now, when I say context, it could be a city, it could be a town, it could be a village, or it could be an urban village or a historic town, whatever it may be. We start basically with a kind of a documentation process, which not only involves documenting the existing urban fabric, but also doing a socioeconomic survey. Now, post doing that, we generally advise our students to formulate a program from the people's need as to what do they require there. If they already have a hospital there, there is no point building a new hospital there, because it is of no use. If that hospital is catering, or if there's an extension to that hospital, fine, we can work on but through the socioeconomic survey, they generally find out that what is the real requirement. Now, once that real requirement is there with us, the program is formalized after that, the brief is formalized after that, and then we choose the site. So in general terms, in a real process, the site is given, the program is given, the brief is given, and you have to design it. So we actually, as part of the curriculum, we choose a reverse process of the entire design, and then we see how this particular engagement of the architect would affect not only the urban fabric, but also the way the people will going to be using that particular building, which will occupy their context, which will become a part of their context for good or for bad. How will it affect the people who are living there? So how will it affect their social life, cultural life, maybe professional life, maybe this entire thing about a vocational center, giving them opportunities, giving the ladies who've been staying at home, but they have a little bit of spare time. And that has been quite a successful model, which has happened in some of the places like Nizamuddin and places like that, which is a very successful model, which has worked there. So that is basically the approach. And I wanted to add on to what Anubha had said about the design thinking. I think design thinking is also about rejecting ideas. It's not only about accepting ideas. So when I say rejecting ideas, I also mean that, the candle stand maker still continues to make the candle stand, even he knows that there is electricity there, the bulb is there and the light is there, but that is his art form that he's attached to, and he or she will gonna keep on making that candles and the candle stands till eternity, because that he feels is part of his soul, or whatever, it's an extension of his existence onto this earth. So that is all I wanted to say.
Yes, okay. No, it's all valid. So we're probably coming to the end of it. So let's see what we can do about segueing back to heritage. I've been attempting to do a PhD at Deakin University School of Architecture here in Geelong, the city of Geelong. Got a UNESCO classification as a design city, and I suppose that's my question: what is a design city, and are they administering it properly from these local government agencies that are in charge of these cities and the like? So I was leading to this design culture within administration, so they can make better ideas, or more informed ideas, to be able to work with architects and designers and citizens and come up with a better outcome. So it's this STEM sort of stuff. Most people that are in business administration, although we're gradually introducing things like design thinking, design methodology, and those research methods to tease out new things to help them be more creative in what they do. So it's the culture, and linking that to heritage is of interest to me. I did a joint paper with Sanmitra, Chitte, to an international Council of Museums conference that's happening in Egypt in the next little while, and we were exploring the Sanskar Kendra in Ahmedabad. Interviewed the leader there from Ahmedabad Municipal Council, and I overlaid that with a questionnaire formulated from the World Tourism Organization of how to deal with COVID and managing the institutions in the COVID mode, and then how to come out of COVID and build a stronger community through that. So we were looking at the opportunities for the museum as a cultural center, or I say a museum, it's a cultural center that is able to assist international visitors, because India is looking to open up, to look at local, regional visitors, but also interstate visitors from across India. So I think I also cite recent research on the difference between religious tourism in India, which is a huge volume of traffic, and as you were pointing out before, Anubha, it's a changing demographic in India, with a growing middle class, people actually taking holidays now and are looking at tourism, and they're looking for that cultural thing. So heritage and culture come strongly together, and so that's the interesting focus that I'm interested to see if able to engage in any further work with the guys from Ahmedabad Municipal Council, but to really test out how you can expand on that interpretive aspect of museums, cultural heritage, and the like. So maybe, Anubha, we'll keep the system happening. If you want to give some thoughts on heritage and culture and the growing change that's happening for the Indian middle class.
Tricky one, that. I hope I'm not on mute.
Okay,
No, I'm not. Yeah.
You're live.
Yeah. So I said that's a tricky one because heritage and culture are extremely loaded words, at least for me. And I personally do strongly believe that heritage is something as a culture which is constantly evolving and changing. What we did 10 years ago, we are not doing anymore. That said, you're right that there's a growing demographic in India, which feels the desire to travel. I think there, the difference is whether they are actually consuming heritage or whether they're looking at travel as a consumption point of view. Taking the example of Ahmedabad or Gujarat per se, Sanskar Kendra, I know very well. Is that the magnet? Because other than religious tourism, the thing that's attracting maximum number of at least Gujaratis, if not Indians, to it is the Statue of Unity. That tall, very tall, I don't know how tall statue that's been made there.
And the world's tallest.
Yeah. So that's not heritage, but that is attracting a large number of tourists. So my question again is, and also when you look at heritage, so yes, there are a lot of destination weddings, but if I take the example, and I'm going to be really bold here and take names, but I look at the Nimrana hotels, which I personally love, but if I look at the main Nimrana property on the outskirts of Delhi or, a little outside of Delhi, I think very little of the older fort is left now. The old fort has been built and rebuilt to such a large extent that it retains, in a way, what you were saying, Mark, that you have built a contemporary building, which looks like the old fort, but it's a contemporary building, and it kind of sits cheek and jowl with the old fort and merges with it. But if that is heritage, sure. I mean, if you would take it. But if I was to look at the oldness or the antiquity of the structure, most of it is new. And that is something that Indians are consuming really, really vastly. So we know of a lot of these boutique sort of heritage properties that have come up in all parts of the country. Now, whether they're genuinely heritage and what is heritage, for me, that becomes the critical question. Nizamuddin is actually the example that Shaleen gave. It's a very different example altogether because the way it's been handled and the kind of sustained intervention that has happened over a period of more than 10 years. But it also comes with that vision, with that perseverance, and with deep pockets, I must say. Who is going to put in that kind of investment of time and resource into what genuine heritage preservation and upgradation could be, for which I think Nizamuddin is a very good example. That for me would be an ideal scenario. But how many people have that kind of, how many people or organizations or even governments have that kind of outlook and that kind of resource which they want to put in? The government may have the resource, but do they want to put it to that? So, and like I said, the new Indian, if I may use that term, is consuming a lot of, he's consuming leisure. Now, heritage is a part of that leisure. And that could be cosmetic heritage as well. Is the new Indian or the changing Indian demographic actually a lover of heritage? I'm not too sure. There is a section of people for sure. But that's again very, very few. As I said, that just now in the festival season, I was in Ahmedabad and I was talking to my cab driver, and he said that there were about 2-hour-long jams leading to the Statue of Unity, which is this tall statue, whatever it is. That has attracted that kind of, and it is not religious. Well, you could say it is national religion, but whatever. But anyway, let's not get into that. But yeah, so it's not religious tourism. Yeah.
Okay, so I remember I was giving a talk in Delhi with the Victorian Trade Mission, the government trade mission, And a delightful young lady came up and talked to me after my presentation. Said, "Oh, you must come down and meet my friend, or my boss. He's Anant, was from Nimrana Hotel." So I said, "Well, look, I'll come down." Actually, I said, "I'll hire a motor vehicle and I'll drive down." I was very ignorant of Indian traffic conditions. There was no hire company that would let me hire a car. So I grabbed a driver and drove for 3 hours and finally found the Kajara Fort, which was being constructed. So had lunch with Armin there and saying, "Well, you know, very interesting. It'd be great to record all of this in some way, shape or form." And he said, "I don't draw. I don't do drawings." He just gives verbal instructions, but he's very clever. He was using a monument that was outside of a heritage classification, so it had enough age that allowed him the ability to develop it without attracting too much regulation and too much force. But maybe Shaleen, you can share some thoughts around heritage culture.
I think most of it I have said it, but I think the point is that we should look at living heritage now and not monumental heritage. So I would completely agree with what has happened to the Nimrana Fort, for example. And to a certain extent in Nizamuddin also, there has been a little bit of input from outside. So I think the approach should be in order to make everything which becomes living heritage, because if I may go back and tell you that, you know, the Indian thought process has always taken time to be cyclic in nature and not linear. So what it leads to is that it leads to a belief that whatever comes from the earth has to go back to the earth. So the culture of museums never existed in India, and they have not been accepted also in that way. So the only way it can be accepted is that work on the heritage which is existing at the moment, turn it into a living heritage, rather than making into a monument for you know, Sunday lunches and taking your kids there because you stay in an area where there is no open space. So let's go to the Lodi tombs and have a picnic at the Lodi gardens and things like that. It has to attain a status which is more than what we have given it. Not that that is bad, but I think it has to grow in that direction. That's what I would like to conclude upon.
Okay.
If I may add, I completely agree, Shaleen, about the cyclic nature of thing, because for India, it is, for Indians or South Asians, perhaps, it's not the actual structure which has so much of importance. I mean, that, like, you know, dust unto dust kind of a thing. However, I mean, yeah, that is completely true. What I did want to add is that there are also regional differences. The way somebody, let's say, so I come from the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and especially Kashmir. So the way Kashmiris look at day out is very, very different from the way somebody in Gujarat or somebody in Bengal does. So the thing about like the day out in the gardens is very, very, very normal for Kashmiris, because we've done it for generations. I mean, that was the easiest thing to do, was to, and we didn't even cook, you know, we just cooked there as well. So I think it's also a regional cultural difference. And there are so many different regions and cultures in India that the way we look at heritage also is different. And it needs a much more nuanced kind of intervention or understanding for different regions of India. The way a Tamilian will look at his or her heritage or any other heritage will be very different from the way an Assamese will, for example. And I think that is something that we have painted in a broad brushstroke in India. Heritage is one sort of one size fits all. No, it doesn't.
Okay. Well, I think we've just about covered our hour that we've been allocated. So can I thank you very much, the two speakers that have joined us, Anubha Kakroo and Shaleen Sharma. Okay. And we'll hand back to Sanmitra Chitte from World University of Design and the ADI, if she's around.
Cheers.
Thank you, Sanmitra.
And I've been listening to all the wonderful discussions across. And yes, all of you, all the panelists here are my real favorites. And I really thank you all to taking out this time and discussing the panel here with Mark. And I'm looking forward to see you all again for the question and answer session soon. So thank you so much.
Thank
Take
you.
I
care.
look forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, Anubha. Bye, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks for your
Sanmitra.
time.
Thanks. Bye, Mark. Bye, Shaleen.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Anshu. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Well, that was one very interesting panel discussion on heritage and smart cities, and I think each one presented very unique ideas. Um, and I quite agree with the fact that the idea of heritage is it's very unique to the region that you belong to. And in fact, I have grown in Delhi. I am a Delhiite, and so the kind of heritage structures and buildings that are left are of a certain kind, and a lot of its heritage. I was reading this book which says that, and it was absolutely decimated in 1857 because Delhi was punished for participating in the First War of Independence. So I could really connect with that. We can learn from the old ways of living, because we also want to have sustainable living. It's important. We cannot. I stay in condos in Gurgaon, and a lot of condominiums which are coming up now are central AC. They have a central AC system, and they are such guzzlers of electricity, and it's so wrong to be staying in such luxury when amid such a waste of natural resources. That it's actually sounds very criminal to be doing it. So I think if we can learn from, because Indian system of making houses and buildings ensured that the ventilation system was proper, so the house would be warmer in summers, and they would be colder in summers and warmer in winters. And in fact, even in hill areas, the houses were made in such a way that they could withstand the winter. So this brings us to the end of the day 2 of ODC, the first ever program of Odisha Design Council. So I'll take your leave. I'll thank you for your time, and have a good night or good day, good evening, or whatever is left of the day. And I'll sign off now. Bye-bye.